more than expected.
Finally, we have some good news on the economy and really the number one issue for many Americans, the cost of living. So we just learned that consumer prices in February increased by 2.8% year over year, 0.2% month over month. Both of these figures were a step in the right direction, and both were better than expected. So this is definitely very encouraging to see, because it's going to, I think...
Oh my God.
Even killed, however you pronounce that. But let's take a look at his video. You guys tell me what your thoughts are. Is Trump playing chess and everybody else playing checkers, or are we wrong?
Got elected, he has been playing 4D chess to achieve his economic goals of lower costs, more domestic production, and higher wages. And the new data that came out today shows that his strategy is paying off. Egg prices are down. Gas prices are the lowest in 4 years. Inflation is down. Private sector jobs are up. It is not getting old saying this, but Trump was right again. As always, like the video and subscribe to the channel, but let's start with CNN having to admit that inflation numbers came down more than expected.
Finally, we have some good news on the economy and really the number one issue for many Americans, the cost of living. So we just learned that consumer prices in February increased by 2.8% year over year, 0.2% month over month. Both of these figures were a step in the right direction, and both were better than expected. So this is definitely very encouraging to see, because it's going to, I think, relieve some fears that inflation was perhaps re-accelerating, because this actually breaks a streak of 4 straight months where I think you could see it on the chart all the way to the right, where the inflation rate was going in the wrong direction, right? It was going higher and higher. Finally, we're seeing it dip.
Now, it showed inflation cooling to 2.8% annually, but that doesn't really tell the whole story, because that takes into account the last 11 months. The number I want you to pay attention to is the 0.2% month over month, because that shows the time period in which Trump was in office, which is annualized to 2.4%. And I'm going to tie this inflation number into his larger strategy here in a little bit. But first, let me show you the jobs report numbers that came out, because this also ties into why inflation is lowering.
Another, starting then with the manufacturing turnaround that President Trump has overseen. The jobs report showed that manufacturing employment rose by 10,000 jobs in President Trump's first full month in office. When you compare that to the Biden administration, Stephanie, manufacturing jobs declined by more than 100,000 over the final 12 months of the Biden administration. It averaged out to about losing 9,000 manufacturing jobs per month. The Trump administration has completely reversed, done a 180 when it came to manufacturing. Specifically, a lot of these jobs that were added this past month came in the private sector.
Now, before he talks about the private sector, the difference between Trump adding jobs in the private sector compared to some of the things that Biden did in the public sector, I just want to stop there for a sec. We were losing these manufacturing jobs at around 9,000 jobs per month. Trump turned that around to add 10,000 jobs. Is that a positive? Do people feel good about this? I don't know. I'm just wondering, like, for the people that do not support Trump, like, can we acknowledge that that's a good thing? Can we acknowledge that it's seeing a better trend now with inflation? Can we acknowledge these things? Or is it just, and a lot of people, it's funny, the conversation that I was having yesterday, I had to remind the person, because it's in this conversation, I'm laughing because of who the person is and whatever. But this conversation, I had to remind them, like, this is a CNN poll. The first one that y'all saw when they were saying that this is surprisingly good news, inflation is turning around, that was CNN. And you could even hear, I don't know if they played it in the full video, I forgot, but you could hear the lady right afterwards. What ends up happening is you get these people that are pretty honest with the polls, and they'll say, like, yo, it's surprising, Trump is doing better than expected, his approval rating is better than expected. And then you'll hear the other person like, well, do we even know? You know, the hate comes. But just think about that. We were losing 9,000 manufacturing jobs a month. Trump added 10,000. manufacturing jobs. Now let's get into the difference what Trump is doing in the private sector and how that impacts the overall country.
First, done a 180 when it came to manufacturing. Specifically, a lot of these jobs that were added this past month came in the private sector as well. So they're good paying private sector jobs. 93% of them came from the private sector. And in the final 2 years of the previous administration, a lot of the job gains were coming from the federal government. Stephanie, 1 out of every 4 new jobs in the final 2 years of the Biden administration came from the federal government.
The reason this is so significant is because private sector jobs actually create value. They increase production, especially in manufacturing. So increase in domestic production is going to lead to more supply, which is going to cool inflation off. And as he alluded to, in the last 2 years of the Biden administration, 1 out of every 4 jobs was a public sector job. Biden was trying to prop up his employment numbers to make the economy look healthier than it was, which is one of the primary reasons why so many federal employees should be getting fired. But more than that, all it did was increase government spending, putting the money into people's pockets with no increase in production output to compensate for that, which
Y'all get, I mean, my understanding, which may be a little bit off, when you create the jobs and 1 out of every 4 is a federal job, the problem with that is who pays for the federal jobs? Who pays for the government jobs? Who pays for these bureaucratic jobs? Us. The private sector jobs are good because that's not money that's being taken out of the American people's pockets in taxes. The private sector, we want them to work. We want them to do well. We want more of those jobs because that's putting money into the people's hands. You get, so that's how I'm reading it.
leads to higher inflation. And what they didn't touch on in that report is there were actually 230,000 jobs gained by US-based workers and 80,000 jobs lost by foreign-born workers. And why that's also significant is look at this study by the National Foundation for American Policy, which found that since 2019, only 479,000 US-born workers were added to the US labor force, compared to 3.6 million foreign-born workers. So all of the illegal immigrants that came into the country under the Biden administration accounted for almost all of the job growth that we saw. American workers were given these useless government jobs, as well as a surge in part-time employment as people had to pick up a second job just to deal with Biden's inflation, making everything unaffordable. So these are giant macroeconomic shifts that Trump is dealing with, and he's playing 4D chess to achieve this. Listen to him talk about how he's seeing the long game here, and he's not worried about the daily fluctuation of stock prices.
Y'all know what it is. It's Dak from the OG Network. Man, I just want to thank y'all. That's right, to thank y'all for all of your tremendous support over the years, whether you've been rocking with us from the beginning or maybe this is the first show that you're checking out on the network. We want to thank you nonetheless. And we have an ask, all right? We have a goal of reaching 20,000 subscribers by the end of March. That's right, 20K by the end of March. It's not a real goal unless you put a date on it. And with that, we need your help. So we ask that if you are enjoying the content that you like, subscribe if you haven't already. And if you're feeling real generous, maybe share with some friends and family. All right, I'll let y'all go. And once again, thank you for your continued support. And we look forward to growing with y'all. See y'all soon.
Is that what you meant? The stock market going down was the disruption? What other disruption were you alluding to?
Look, what I have to do is build a strong country. You can't really watch the stock market. If you look at China, they have a 100-year perspective. We have a quarter. We go by quarters.
That's true.
And you can't go by that. You have to do what's right. What we're doing is we're building a tremendous foundation for the future, tremendous foundation. Everything's been taken away. We don't make ships anymore. We don't, you just saw one of the biggest shipbuilders in the world, one of the biggest shipping people in the whole world.
In the Oval Office with you.
In the Oval Office. He's announcing a $20 billion investment in the United States, which he would have never done except for this. But look at this. Honda, Toyota, they're all coming in. You take a look at what's happening. The chip maker, the greatest chipper, Mr. Wei, the biggest in the world by far, is going to spend $200 billion on making a massive plant to make chips.
So that's your message? Build it here?
Build it here, there's no tariff.
Yeah.
So Donald Trump understands that the entire global order of trade is propped up on the backs of the American consumer getting hurt. And unraveling this gigantic mess is going to cause some disruption as production moves to the United States. Trump's America First policy is making U.S. employers more bullish, which is leading to the rise in manufacturing jobs in other sectors, causing inflation to come down because these companies can now actually invest confidently in their US-based production because now they know that relying on foreign imports will be an unsustainable, too expensive business model. And that
So y'all get what's going on. Y'all get what's going on. I want to fast forward very quickly because we talked about the approval ratings. Before we move on to the next video, I just want to highlight this.
are thrilled about what Doge is doing, and CNN just can't believe it. Watch.
About when we're talking about the cuts that Doge is bringing about. How are they feeling about it?
Yeah, this to me was one of the more shocking figures that I saw. Made me go, wait a minute, hold on one second. Whoa, Americans on Trump and Joe's efforts. Musk and Doge should influence government spending and operations. Look at this, 54%. The majority say that he and they should. How about approve of Trump trying to cut staff at government agencies? Again, you get a majority here, 51%. So yeah, Elon Musk might not be that popular, but these cuts and the idea of spending cuts, at least within the federal government and cutting at government agencies, that actually has majority support. I was truly surprised by this, Kate, but the numbers are the numbers.
Well, there is a view that cuts across Democrat and Republican of people thinking that Washington is too big, bloated federal government, waste, fraud, and abuse. I mean, those are drain the swamp is what people run on over and over again.
And it's not even speculation.
All right, let's move on. Real quick video that I wanted to show y'all. But shout out to Brandon Lehman, man. He's dope. Make sure that y'all definitely go check out his page. He's definitely dope. I want to show y'all this. And obviously, well, Fox reported this. I gotta go back. We gotta have some. We need a fact checker on this show, man. We need a fact checker. I know we got a few. Shout out to Mama Lay. I know you always checking the facts. I know we got a few, but take a look at this, and you guys let me know your thoughts on it. And yeah,
it's the worst border in the history of the world. The people are petrified, and it's getting worse and worse. You look at New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and now you look at all over the place.
This comes as a new report reveals illegal migrants are making up to about 75% of the arrests right here in Midtown Manhattan, where I am sitting. Former director of New York ICE removals, Tom Feely, joins us right now with reaction.
Is that wild? 75%. We gotta confirm that. We gotta confirm that. I mean, I assume that Fox wouldn't put out something that they didn't. Well, you can't make those assumptions. I don't even know how we need to confirm that. We need to figure out where this report came out. Check it, because 75% of arrests in Midtown Manhattan are migrant suspects. That's wild. That's wild. And see, that's when, you know what's wild? All right, so that's when change starts to happen, in my opinion, because it's different if this may be the situation in the Bronx, certain parts of Harlem, certain parts of Brooklyn, certain parts. But when it starts to happen in Midtown, and when it starts to impact the folk that have a good amount of money, that's when people are going to start to, maybe on the other side say, wait, this is an issue. We got to address this. So I don't know, but that's pretty wild to have those numbers, 75% of the arrests in Midtown Manhattan being migrant suspects. But let's keep going. We'll only listen to like a few seconds of this one.
Tom, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve. Thanks for having me.
We've got this kind of perfect storm going on where you've got the migrant crisis. Tens of thousands of migrants are here in the New York City area. At the same time, they had the bail reform. So they know that if they're arrested, it's a revolving door. They're going to be out in 8 minutes.
Why do we have certain rules that are incentivizing and encouraging? It seems like ever since the pandemic, when I think California was the first state to do it, when they made stealing up to, what was it, like $5,000, they made it a misdemeanor. So we saw all these people running in the stores, a lot of the luxury stores, robbing, and people just kind of had to let them steal it. And then going to New York City right now and going to a Walgreens, everything literally in the store is locked up. I would say 90% of the things in the store are locked up. The only things that I saw that I can recall that weren't locked up, even the water, they had a lock on the water. The things that weren't locked up were like the gum when you're walking to pay to the register. That's the world that we're living in right now. That's the world that we're living in.
Absolutely. You know, it's really sad. I retired in 2021 from ICE just because of this reason. The Biden administration came in and was going to order us not to enforce the law. And quite frankly, I just wasn't raised that way, and it wasn't going to happen with me. You know, New York City did this to themselves. They could do 4 things right now this morning, Steve, that could fix this problem. Get rid of the horrible green light law, which prohibits law enforcement with cooperating with ICE in New York State. Get rid of your ridiculous sanctuary city stuff in New York City, which isn't working anywhere in the country. Take a look at this bail reform, because you are absolutely right. If you go into these tent cities or these camps or the hotels or wherever they're housing these illegal aliens, they will flat out tell you they know they're not going to be detained long. And the other thing that we really need to do, you know, New York City and law enforcement in New York State has to honor ICE detainers. All we're asking for is you to hold a bad guy.
Right.
A day or so we have an opportunity to get there, pick them up, and interview them. All these things would keep our country safe, but the governor and the mayor down in New York City absolutely want no part of this.
Yeah. And
I don't know, Mayor Adams, what you gonna do? What you got to say about this, brother? But let's move on. All right, so that's the situation in New York. We're gonna move on to the situation with
It's Dak. Just want to thank you for checking out our video and visiting the OG Network. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure that you give us a like. And if you're looking to join a community of inspired individuals striving for purposeful abundance, subscribe. And if you're feeling real generous, share the video with some friends and family. All right, I'll see y'all soon. Ew.